What is power?
It's not what you think it is. It's not, you know, Vladimir Putin or presidents or Biden or all these political figures and these big games. Power is a feeling, it's an essence, it's an emotion. It's a human need and desire. And really, what power is a sense of understanding yourself and being able to control yourself. So the way I look at it, I like to look at it not through the lens of great power politics, but as an average, everyday human being here in the United States or in England. The feeling that you have with your children, with your spouse, with your colleagues, the people who work for you, the sense that you have no control, that you can't influence them with your ideas, that you can't get them to maybe, soften some of their ugly behavior if they have that you can't get them interested in helping you with a project or whatever, is the most miserable feeling a human being can have. Malcolm X had a quote that I love, which is, absolute power corrupts, but absolute powerless corrupts even more. Butchering it, but that was the gist of it. The feeling of powerlessness is actually more corrupting than the feeling of having a lot of power. It turns people into being passive aggressive, into playing all kinds of weird games, negative games to get power. You want to feel that you have a degree of control over events in your life, over people, over your future. And that to me is what the power is, right? And so some of that involves these games that I mentioned in there, and some of it goes beyond the 48 laws of power, which I've tried to indicate in my other books. But it's the sense that I'm not helpless in this world. I remember when I first entered the work world as a very naive college graduate with all these ideals and things I'd read, because I was studying literature and languages, going, man, this is weird. People are playing all these kind of games. I'm in over my head. I made mistakes. I got fired for being, too brash, for outshine the master. It was painful, right? And so learning, you don't have to use the laws of power. I don't advocate crushing your enemy totally. I hope I don't have any enemies ever that I need to crush ever. You just need to know these things so that when you enter the work world, you're not naive, you're not stupid, you don't make the same kind of mistakes that I made. You spare yourself the pain. You understand the most fundamental thing about human nature. People have egos. Even your boss has an ego. You think he or she doesn't because they're powerful. They're even more insecure than other people. You need to be aware of these things so that you don't inadvertently make them feel insecure and suffer the consequences. If you can't control yourself, then you're in a lot of trouble in this world, right? Because when you just naturally are yourself doing things, you're going to offend people. You learn early on we're social animals. I have to tailor my behavior, If you go on babbling about how you feel and think, etc., and you just say what's the first thing on your mind, you're going to end up having a very, very short career. You're going to be saying things that are going to offend people. You're going to be making a fool of yourself. You're going to be saying things that you end up regretting, right? So you have no self-control. And if you see somebody who has no self-control, it makes you look like you're not powerful. If you can't control yourself, how can you control anything in your environment? How can you be a leader, right? So you have to learn certain things about your nature, about who you are, and not just be anybody. You have to kind of tailor your appearances as well, because for good or for bad, I'm a believer in looking at the human animal without shame and embarrassment, just as we are, right? And appearances matter. It's the animal part of our nature. We judge people by how they appear, how they dress, their tone of voice, their body language, etc., etc. It would be, in an ideal world, we wouldn't judge people by appearances. We would judge them by what's inside of them. Yes, I agree with that. But that we're not ideal. We're not descended from angels. We're descended from primates. So you have to understand that appearances matter, and this is part of the game. And so you have to control your appearances a little bit. You have to tailor it. You have to be a bit of actor in this world. These are things that people don't like to admit about ourselves. We like to think that we're much more idealistic, that these things really don't matter in the end. And I wish it were that way, but it's not. And so I'm a bit more of a realist when it comes to things like that. I talk about it in the 48 Laws of Power, where you have to play this game in life. To me, it's a form of wisdom, which is, it's a wisdom that used to exist like in the 18th century. I read a book that had a big impact on me many years ago called The Fall of Public Man. by Richard Sennett, in which he described like cafe life in London in the 18th century or France. And he was saying back then, when you entered the public arena or your cafe, you knew you were an actor. You left the house, you put on a mask, and you had fun, You knew it was like fun, it was play. When you're a child, you like playing games, you like putting on costumes, you like playing your parents or some character you saw on TV. It's part of human nature. We like to play these games. We're role players, we're actors. And he was saying in the 18th century, that was just a given in life. That when you entered the public realm, you knew you were an actor. And then when you went home to your wife, your family, or your husband or wherever, drop the mask, you breathe a deep sigh of relief, go, now I can be who I am, right? And it wasn't a problem. It didn't create neuroses. It didn't create this like, what's wrong with me? I don't know who I am anymore. So people now, the problem now is we don't have distance from that social realm. And so we think that if we're acting, that's who we are. But it's not. It's just that's part of being a social animal, is playing a role. I did a book with 50 Cent, and he kind of exemplifies a lot of that. He plays a role in life. When I met him, I thought, I was kind of intimidated. I was a little bit afraid. The thug. This is a guy, when I met him, he was, just a few years away from being shot and all this stuff. And I met him, and he was the nicest person in the world. He was almost kind of sweet. He'd hate it if I said that word, but he was sweet, right? He was very down to earth. He was very calm, etc. He's playing a role when he goes out and he plays that person. He knows it. He knows it's like, he doesn't take it seriously, He had this big beef with Kanye West back when I was doing the book with him. And then I met the two of them in Vegas when they were there for the awards. They were like the best of friends. They were joking. It was just a game they were playing, right? So what I tell people is, we all are actors. Humans are born actors. We learn at a very early age to play that kind of game. It's kind of fun sometimes to do that, enjoy that part of life, but don't get it confused with who you are in your essence. It all depends on the details, the kind of negative person you're dealing with. There are several kind of ways of looking at it, some kind of micro and some kind of much larger. The larger picture is, we all have negative traits. We all have dark traits, right? And so if you have this idea that it's just human beings are like this, it's like flour or a rock or a tree, it has its nature, I just accept it. I accept people for who they are, and I deal with them on that level. I don't judge them, etc. Now, of course, when you're dealing with negative people, it can be very difficult because negative people like to stir up a lot of drama around them. And that's the kind of power that they get. They like the attention that they get from making people upset, from pulling on your emotions, right? So you have to have this kind of larger look at them where it's not about me, right? They're dealing with their own issues, their own problems. There's a history behind it. It could be their parents, it could be their family, it could be their spouse, their children, whatever. And they're venting it on me in this particular moment, but it's not personal. I tell people, don't take everything so personally, right? But then, so there are all these different levels, and it all really depends on the specifics, because a lot of people come to me for advice. But a lot of times you're enmeshed with a negative person, like it's your boss, it's your spouse, et cetera, and it's very difficult to do what I'm talking about, right? And so you have to try and get a little bit of distance from them. You have to be able to say to yourself, they're not me, right? They have their own problems. I'm separate from them. The sense of being separate from them is very liberating, right? So they have issues and they're trying to drag me into it and they're trying to drag me down. But I'm not them. I have my own life and I'm not going to get involved. Sometimes you need to have empathy, but sometimes you need to shut that off. And so the best thing in life, though, is, that's why I say there's just so many angles to approach this from, is if they're like a deep narcissist, and that's probably the most common type of negative person you deal with in the world today, and we all have come across this. The power that you have is to recognize people like that before you get involved with them, and to not get involved with them, right? And so they have signs, things that you can pick up in advance. People who are toxic, I don't know if we're going to toxic and negative are the same here. They don't show it immediately. They're good at deceiving you. They can be very charming. They can be very dramatic. They pull you in with their great stories. Sometimes they're even charismatic. A lot of important CEOs in the world, people like Elon Musk, are raging narcissists. They appear very exciting and you want to get to know them. But you have to recognize that these are people that are probably going to use you, right? They don't see you as an individual. And the people you associate with, we're very, as humans, we're very open to the emotions of other people, right? And so the people you associate with have a huge role on who you are and the energy you have, your daily life, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have to be very, very careful who you let into your life, right? And I tell people that don't judge people as far as who are you going to let into your life. Don't be deceived by the appearances. Don't judge people based on their intelligence, on their charm, on whether they're good or bad, etc. Judge them on their character, whether they have a weak or a strong character. Well, also there are people who appear to be humble, but they're not really humble.
Agreed.
There's a lot of people now who feign humility because it's seen as a positive trait. So humans are born actors, and you have to kind of look behind the mask. So I tell people, I view it as strong or weak character. A strong character is a person who can take criticism, right? Who can work with other people, right? Who can deal with stressful situations, who can handle responsibility. And if there's something goes wrong, they take I'm to blame for it. They don't look at other people. There's somebody you can rely on. You lean on them, and there's something there to lean on. You can rely on them in situations. A weak character is somebody who cannot take criticism. That is probably the number one characteristic, the worst trait, I think, in people, and a definite trait of negativity, is somebody who can't take any kind of criticism, right? They're so defensive. So that means they can get away with anything. They can say anything they want, and there's just like a wall, a shell around them, right? So the ability in a work situation, in a relationship, to take criticism and be able to use it constructively is an incredibly useful and powerful trait to me that reveals strong character. How people handle stress is a really good sign of their character. So in a work situation, people are good at faking it and pretending that they're very strong. But when it gets really stressful and there's a lot of pressure on it, the mask falls off and they reveal that they can't handle it. They're too weak. They're reacting to everything. They can't get out of the moment. They're so impatient, and fragile. And so the ability to handle stress shows that somebody has something strong inside of them, right? Mm-hmm. How they handle power, right? So when people are kind of climbing up the ladder in a group or in a job, they generally try and pretend like they're with the group. But once they have power, that all falls off, and they can become abusive, and they feel like they can get away with things that they couldn't get away with before. They treat people below them miserably, etc. So when people have power, how do they handle it? Are they responsible? Do they suddenly become somebody different? Or do they maintain the character that they had beforehand, right? What kind of partners do they choose? Do they choose a spouse, a husband, a girlfriend, etc.? Somebody that they can push around, somebody that's inferior to them so that they can feel better about themselves? How do they look when they're playing like a game or they're in outdoor activities or something that has nothing to do with work? Are they so competitive they have to win at everything, even when it's like outside of that kind of environment, These are kind of traits that help me sort of judge a person's character. I know that I tend to get involved with narcissistic people. It's a weakness of mine, right? And maybe it's because of my upbringing, and maybe it's because I feel a kind of emptiness inside of me, and that their charm and the attention that they pretend to give you is kind of enchanting or casts a spell on you and it draws you in. Yeah, so if you're dealing with your own weaknesses and your own emptiness inside, you're going to be drawn to people who fill that up. Or you're going to be drawn to causes and charismatic leaders that pretend to give you a purpose in your life because you don't have a purpose, but they have it for you, kind of thing. So a lot of it has to do, with ourselves, and we're even attracted to negative people. And there are people who have patterns in their life, where they deliberately choose the worst kind of person for them, right? And over and over and over again, because at least that makes them feel alive. At least the pain of it, gives them a sense of something dramatic, and so they deliberately bring on that kind of pain.